Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. Today it's our second web chat where me, as Avon and Somerset Police and Crime Commissioner, will be asking questions from Andy Marsh, our Chief Constable, some of the questions that you've also submitted. This is really an indication of how we want to be as open and transparent with you, the residents of Avon and Somerset, and making sure that we are accessible. So if you do have questions, please let me know. There will be a number of web chats that we will be having. So thank you, Andy, very much for joining us today. At the beginning of this month, I launched the police and crime plan for the whole of Avon and Somerset, and that was after consultation with a lot of local people, a lot of organisations. And there were 4 priorities in the plan: protecting the most vulnerable from harm, the strengthening and improving local policing teams, ensuring the constabulary have got the right kit, the right culture and the right people, and to work together with other police forces and partners. And the highest priority is protecting the most vulnerable from harm. So can you tell us about how you can make a difference to our most vulnerable, how you are going to work with the constabulary to deliver that?
Okay, so I mean it's a very broad-ranging question, so you might have to cut me off at risk of boring the people that are listening. But actually, one of the reasons why I'm particularly pleased to see this as our highest priority is that this is the reason why we're in policing. It's the reason I'm in policing, and it's the reason the 6,000 odd souls that I lead within the constabulary in policing, and actually we care passionately about it. So I've not got a problem delivering this at all in that respect. But how can I make a difference? Well, it's so broad-ranging. I'll start quite big. Good leadership of those 6,000 people, creating the space for them to have the time to be the best in the world at tackling vulnerability and keeping people safe. It's one of the reasons I'm very proud of British policing, because we're here for people who don't have a voice. We are independent of government, that operational independence, and so actually effective leadership is one thing of those 6,000 people, so that they can deliver their vocation to make a difference. But it is about much more than that. We can't do it on our own, so it's about partnership. For instance, partnership with local authorities, who have a critical role around safeguarding, partnership with the voluntary sector. And I was in Bristol yesterday talking to voluntary agencies around mental ill health. So important that we work with partners. But then actually policing, it is a partnership with the public. So it's about us working with the public to help keep them safe, but to help them help us keep vulnerable people within society safe. And actually, just to nail the vulnerability question, leadership, actually in a very functional way, I've got 18 different senior leaders that champion aspects of vulnerability, because that's how broad vulnerability is. So whether it's about missing people, whether it's about children.
I couldn't believe how many missing people we had in Avon and Somerset.
About 8,000 a year, and more than half of them are children. And thankfully, the vast majority turn up safe. But every child that is missing potentially is at risk of sexual exploitation or exposure to drugs or alcohol. Each of those 8,000 missing people, and if we look at the tragic events of last weekend when poor Henry Burke fell in the River Avon, actually every single missing person is a potentially very dangerous situation that we must thoroughly and professionally respond to and investigate. So there are some other big things. The important thing to note is that we're all vulnerable in life at some stage. When we're born and towards the end of the life, we're all vulnerable. But people are vulnerable on other occasions for different reasons. A student who's drunk too much, for example. There are lots of different reasons why we're vulnerable. So what else can we do? We can give people the right technology. We can use the right technology. Avon and Somerset is an exemplar force around the use of predictive analytics. So this is using all of our data, and we're doing it in partnership with some other agencies such as Bristol City Council to identify who the most vulnerable are, and then focus our very scarce and precious resources on keeping them safe and protecting and safeguarding them. Now, people listening won't get to see this happening on their streets. Most vulnerability happens in private places, and that's one of the dilemmas and rubs about policing, is that people will judge us very frequently from when was the last time you saw a copper. Actually, vulnerability and threat delivered through the internet is all private place. So you're not going to tackle that through visible policing. So these are the difficult dilemmas that we face.
So if we moved on to domestic abuse, as you know that we've just launched the 4-week domestic campaign,
Yeah.
and tackling and raising awareness, supporting survivors of domestic abuse is a priority of mine. So let's just talk about what the constabulary are doing about tackling domestic abuse. So what assurance can you give me and our viewers that the victims are believed, that they are listened to and they are understood?
Well, it's a difficult question to give you a convincing answer to, but I guess the proof of the pudding is in the eating. So I would say look at the dials, the big figures, and then listen to the anecdote. And I know that you do both, so you listen to survivors of domestic abuse and you look at the figures. So I'll tell you about some of the figures. In the last 12 months, we've recorded about 16,000 instances of domestic violence. That's up almost 40% on last year. So I would say we're getting better at recording it, so our accurate crime recording, and people are becoming more willing to report domestic abuse to us more frequently. Because although we would like to solve it the first time we deal with it, we can't always do that. So that's one thing. A second dial that I would look at is the number of domestic violence prevention orders that we issued in the last 12 months. Over 230. Significantly more than most other forces. So we're also using the powers that are available to us to protect people. Those orders, by the way, enforce a separation between the two parties of the violence over a period of time.
It moves the perpetrator out of the household, doesn't it?
Initially authorised by a police superintendent, so a very serious and senior level of authority, and then within a certain time period it needs to go to a magistrate's court, both of which, not always with the victim of the assaults, agreement and consent. So sometimes people need protecting. So we think more people are reporting it, we think we're taking it seriously. I hear some wonderful anecdote through letters of thanks. I know you do as well, around the way in which we've given people their lives back who were subject to abuse and intimidation. But actually, let me be clear, we don't get it right every time because we're a people business. And whilst we should strive for that, nor can we reasonably expect our officers doing an incredibly ambiguous, difficult job, real-time judgment, in a split second to get it right every time. So I beg forgiveness as well on occasions.
Yeah, and I understand that. It's now a 1-year anniversary of the new powers of coercive control, which were very much brought to light within the story on the Archers. I have to say I had to start tuning into the Archers as well. But how well is the constabulary on about using these new powers?
Well, I must confess at this stage, I've not tuned into the Archers.
Okay.
But it's good that modern media and culture, if we can call the Archers that, does actually shine a light on modern dilemmas and problems. So the offence of coercive control, it is what it said. It's where someone is being coerced through violence or a fear of violence, and it's having a significant impact on their life.
And it's looking at patterns of behaviour, isn't it?
It has to be established.
Yeah.
It does have to be established. It's not a one-off instance. But actually, I'm sure many people, sadly, watching us talking about this, will recognise that sort of behaviour, unfortunately, because it's such a prevalent problem. Now this new legislation is quite difficult to get through a court. So we've recorded only 50 occasions, so not many in the last 12 months, and that's possibly because officers are recording what we might regard as a primary offence of violence. If someone's been assaulted, it's perhaps more straightforward to record and prove that offence. So we are not recording significant numbers of them, nor have we been successful yet in getting them through courts. But that doesn't mean that officers aren't aware. They've been trained in it. There's significant communications, and actually I think we will see it used more frequently. I think if people are watching, the important message that I would want to get out there is if you feel that you're in a coercive or controlling relationship, or your friend is, and they've confided in you, and these can happen men and women, women and men, same sex, actually the police can help, and we would encourage you to report it to us.
Yeah, I think with the rollout of the body-worn videos, how do you think that will impact on domestic abuse and convictions?
Well, we've become one of the foremost users of body-worn video in the country. This is new technology where officers wear cameras on their lapels that record what they're doing, and there are many benefits around it in terms of influencing the behaviour that the officer and the person they're dealing with, through to gathering superb evidence and actually speeding the criminal justice system. Now we've got about 1,000 cameras out there now. You've authorised that I purchase 2,400, which is a personal issue to every police officer in the frontline position and PCSO, uniformed officers. Actually, they will gather fantastic evidence at domestic violence incidents of people in an injured and distressed state, of damage to premises, and of admissions and conduct at the scene of the crime. Now the emerging, in fact, firm evidence is that these encourage early admissions, earlier guilty pleas, swifter and fairer justice, especially around domestic abuse. And it does facilitate what we would call a victimless prosecution. So very understandably on occasions, an individual might be reluctant, they're frightened or otherwise, to pursue a prosecution through the criminal justice system. Well, the evidence and experience of the use of body-worn video is very clearly that it helps us do that much more effectively.
I think that's really important, particularly with victimless prosecutions. It's something that I think we have to use technology in order to be able to not to have to get the victim to come to court if she's being, or he is being pressurised. Okay, let's move on to modern slavery, which is a key priority of the Home Office and here in Avon and Somerset. So let's just talk about the scale of the problem and what types of slavery have been uncovered.
It is, unfortunately, a significantly yet fully exposed problem. There's a good deal of work on it nationally that tends to suggest that as many as 10 to 13,000 people are currently subject of modern slavery in England and Wales right now. That's more people at the height of what people would recognise historically as slavery were enslaved in Britain. Right. And that is a modern day scandal. Now those individuals are sometimes British, they're sometimes foreign, and the modern slavery comes in all different shapes and sizes. It might be in the sex industry, and it tends to be young women, quite often from Eastern Europe, who come here expecting to be appropriately employed and end up trapped and enslaved. It could be about car washes, it could be about nail bars, it could be about the food industry, it could be domestic servitude. It comes in all different shapes and sizes, and it is a truly dreadful crime when you expose the individual circumstances of it, as we have done on many occasions within Avon and Somerset. We've been very proactive, but it is happening out there in every community, urban and rural. So I would ask the public to be aware of situations that could cause them concern, and actually it's hidden in plain view. If there is a very young girl in a nail bar, perhaps a foreign national, then actually that's something we would want reported to us so we can look into it. If there are people in a car wash wearing flip-flops in winter, that doesn't look right, and it's not right. So we would want people to talk to us about it.
And how, because it's much bigger than just a police problem, isn't it? How are you working with partners to investigate and uncover this practice?
One of the tricky things about modern slavery offences is that they take a long time to investigate. They're complicated. They are largely organised by serious and organised gangs, as opposed to individuals acting on their own. So they're difficult offences to bring to justice. Typically, at the moment, it's taking us 12 to 18 months to get them to court, which is a long time. The victims are very often reluctant to stay the course to get a case to prosecution. So what we're doing more and more is working with local authorities around child protection issues, and really dreadfully, some of these modern slavery circumstances are where children are passed around groups of men for sex and effectively enslaved for that purpose. And the reason why serious and organised criminals are starting to work more around people is that you can only sell drugs once. It's gone then. You can sell an individual over and over and over again, and it will keep giving you money. So actually we need to work with, and we are working with, Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs. So we are taking every single avenue to disable and demolish these criminal networks that will enslave people so miserably.
Yeah, I think I still get too many people who say that it happens somewhere else, but it does happen in Avon and Somerset, doesn't it? It happens in
Avon and Somerset, it happens in Somerset and Bristol and North Somerset, Baines and South Gloucestershire. It doesn't respect boundaries of city and countryside. And the gangs that move these people around, one day they may well be working in Somerset, the next they'll be in Norfolk or Merseyside or Lancashire. It respects no boundaries, which is why We're working incredibly closely with the National Crime Agency, and we've secured government funding nationally of an additional £50 million over 3 years to establish a network to build the intelligence picture so that we can get in front of these people and arrest them and stop them doing this and rescue the people that are subject to this. And just to be clear, because people listening might not realise this, the people who are perpetrating these offences and the people who are victims of these offences are just as significantly from white British backgrounds as they are foreign national backgrounds. That is another myth that needs to be busted.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for that. Let's just move on to police stations. Something that we've just launched our latest estate strategy over the next few years, basically saying that where we have got oversized, underused buildings, that we'll be moving into smaller buildings, and making sure that that viewers can understand that we are not leaving places in Avon and Somerset. We are moving into buildings that are just more equipped to suit our practices, and I think that we also have to explain that we are in a very we have a lot of cuts. We have austerity that we've had to find over 60 million over the last few years. We've still got to find 20 million, and we've got to. One thing that local people ask me for is that they want as strong as we can with our neighbourhood policing teams. So what we have to do is sharing with fire, as we announced earlier this week. So how are we going to continually to make sure that we've got the right estate in the right place?
Okay, well, policing is full of decisions. The operational ones that the men and women are doing right now as we speak are the most difficult. But you and I have got some difficult decisions as well, as you've outlined. We've got to save £8 million next year. Mm-hmm. Now actually, people do policing, and people need to be properly equipped. And you've already started to invest in the technology. We've talked about body-worn video. We need to give our officers and staff mobile digital technology as well, so we can work with a society that is mobile and digital. So we've got a choice about whether we retain an estate which is too big, too expensive to run, and actually not fit for purpose, or whether we change it.
And presumably that is what led us to make the decision regarding Yeovil.
Well, there are some pretty stark decisions in respect of Yeovil. The custody facilities there are not adequate. They're not fit for modern use by the standards we set ourselves. So if we wanted to keep our custody there, we'd have to invest £8.5 million. And you will know, I know, that we've not got that. Yeah. But what I would want the people in Yeovil to know is that they will still be policed effectively. We will maintain a very active police presence in their community. Now, we can do that and protect the numbers of police officers and police staff involved in policing that community much better if we share with the local fire authority and work in the heart of Yeovil. So I think the key message is I would ask people to understand that we're protecting police services through doing this. Mm-hmm. We've got 700 fewer officers for a start than we had 10 years ago. I'm sure the taxpayer wouldn't want to be paying for empty desks where they used to work. We need to downsize, we need to save money. But actually we think that we can best do this by moving, not leaving. Yeah. We're not leaving communities, we're moving to more appropriate facilities. You've asked me to make sure that the police stations are very strongly branded, because people want the police in their communities. They're proud of the police. It's a significant part of our communities. So if anything, the police stations that we move to, often shared, will be much more strongly branded, so people can see that we are in the heart of their communities and we're active and we're working with partners.
Thank you. Before we finish up, I've got some questions that have been submitted, many regarding mobile phones and driving, which I'm sure will be no surprise. And Andrew asks, what are your opinions on penalties for driving on a mobile phone? Should they be increased? Now, I'm happy to take this because I know that the police won't want to comment, but as far as I'm concerned, you only have to walk around any city centre, any of our villages and towns, and you will constantly see people on their mobile phones. They have the impression that it's okay to drive. Now, I believe that we should have much more robust sentencing. I do believe that you should be banned if you are caught, and I think that that's something that I will work with fellow police and crime commissioners to work with the judiciary on that. But I wondered what you can do about solving the issues about driving on mobile phones, because there's never going to be enough police officers to sit on all our shoulders to tell us that we can't use our phones. So it's almost got to be a societal issue, a bit like, you know, not using seatbelts, and not drink driving. So, you know, what do you think the constabulary can do? Well,
we can continue to enforce it where we get the opportunity to, and we issue about 1,000 tickets a year for people using phones when they're driving, so not an insignificant amount. But as you point out, whilst I do think that there is merit in what criminologists would call a desistance theory, so that the risk of getting caught causes people to desist, there is merit in that. It cannot be the only.
No.
It cannot be the only lever that you pull. So we need people to help us with this. The people who would complain about it, how often have they been in a car with someone driving and texting or on the phone? I hope they would say, "What on earth do you think you're doing? Stop it." But actually, this is quite often everyone else's problem. I'm not saying it's Andrew, by the way. I cast aspersions about it. So increasing the penalty will make a difference. Obviously, continuing to police it will make a difference. A responsible society that doesn't actually say it's all right to break that law, that would help me a lot, as has largely, but not completely, happened with drink driving. The plea that I would make, Sue, is that society's changing, and actually as society changes, technology changes, it is not beyond the wit of the mobile phone manufacturers to create blocking technology that stops people using their phone when they're driving, unless it's adequately paired. And it's the same plea that I would make about the use of the internet. The internet's a wonderful thing. It provides information and access globally that we didn't have, you and I, when we were growing up. But actually, where is it all right to exchange images of children being raped and abused? It's not. And actually, internet service providers could design it out like that, and they won't. So actually, let's have a bit more responsibility of the manufacturers to deal with designing out the causes of crime.
No. Finally, Peter says that there's a widely held perception that it's not worth phoning the police because they don't do anything, and part of what Peter was saying is that the poor response time on answering 101 telephone calls. And I know we've done a tremendous amount of work, but can you just get me up to date about what the constabulary is doing about this?
Well, we're doing an awful lot, and in fairness, Sue, you ask me about it most weeks. So this is a conversation we have quite a lot. You would agree with me, I know, that our priority is on 999, and that's where we ask people to ring us if there's a life-threatening situation or a crime in action or a real emergency, and it's important that we maintain as near a 10-second answering time on them, and we do. That's important. But we receive about 800,000 calls in total a year. It's a massive volume of work. You consider that 1.6 million people live in Avon Somerset. Now that's not half of them ringing us, but it's a pretty big demand. Sure. There's a lot of people ringing. Now we're answering a primary reception on the 101 significantly in around 23 seconds, around that period. People who can't be dealt with immediately go into a secondary call handling system where the call wait time is nearer 4 minutes. Now that's too long, but it's not an emergency. And I bet you can ring up lots of commercial companies and wait longer than that without getting the personalised service you get from us at the end. So we're doing lots of things. The dropout rate is too high. We're losing about 10% of calls. But significantly, the wait time and the dropout time is decreasing. So we're going in the right direction. We're making progress. You've enabled me to purchase some technology which is better matching our scarce resource, our call handlers, to the demand, so we're very flexibly rostering people. What we really do need to do is reduce that demand, because we've not got a bottomless pit of resources. I know that people listening will understand that. So we would like, over the next few years, for appropriate cases, giving people choice to shift some of that demand digitally online. And we would like to reduce some of that demand by working in partnership with other agencies. So there is an awful lot happening with this, and we'll continue to work on it until those call times are very significantly reduced, the wait time. And I will continue to hold you to account on these. Before we close, is there anything that you'd like to say, at the end of this? Well, we're coming up for Christmas, so if there are people watching, I'd like to ask for them to help me. Help me by encouraging people not to drink and drive and to behave responsibly over what should be a festive and an enjoyable time of year, and to be careful about leaving presents and gifts in view or in the car. So help us make your Christmas and your December, your winter, a very happy and safe one.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much for watching us. I'm only as good as Police and Crime Commissioner as the information you give me. So if you've got questions that you want to ask me that I can ask Andy, then please let me know. It is all part of being as open and transparent as we possibly can, and you are part of that. So I'm accountable to you. So you hold me to account, and I hold the Chief to account. So please ask me any questions. Our next web chat will be in end of January, so I hope that we get a few more questions. But thank you very much for watching, and Merry Christmas.